My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags.
Bang, bang.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Behind Enemy Lines, deep in a bunker in the communist state of Illinois. You got the three apostles, Jason, the producer, Terry, and Paul. So he's like,
I was actually named after
never
an apostle,
like,
though.
I don't know. I don't like these like long things by my mouth.
Yes, listen to
I'm
this
like,
guy.
I don't know.
Such
I'm
a
like,
heathen.
So we're gonna have a really, really good show again. Every show's a good show. And so tonight we have Michelle Peterson, and she's got a very heartwarming story about what happened to how this mother defends her child, right? And this was before all this crazy stuff started in Illinois throughout the country.
Way back.
So Michelle is going to talk about how her son was groomed by his teacher. And he was sending him texts and trying to suck this young, innocent boy in while in high school to let the teacher perform oral sex on him. It's disgusting. So we're going to show, before Michelle comes on, we're going to show a little video of one of her interviews and give you a little background before she speaks and shares her story with us. And then after that, we're going to talk about the DGTRO, Downers Grove Township Republicans. So I think most of you people that are watching us,
Republicans in name only. That's the term.
most of you folks that watch us are grassroots, right? And I think we sat back and we're watching the state of Illinois get just eaten up by cancerous Democrats.
Communists.
Yeah, and the Republican Party, we're all Republicans, kind of. I was a Democrat, and I'm a Republican now. My family's a Republican now, and the problem with the Republicans, they don't have a spine, right? So they're too worried about representing the middle. We have a state senator, Jim Kern, our minority leader, that's worried about the Democrats. That man will not speak up against the pornography in his own child's school, my kid's school. The Downers Grove Township Republicans chairman. And you're going to hear us. We're going to try to soften things up tonight, but you're going to hear why we're going to go on a counterattack. This guy refuses to support us in the school boards. He also called us anarchists because some of our senior older committeemen asked to censure Tornatori and Paczynski. They gave money to Deb Conroy, one of our enemies on the Democratic side. They gave money to Kim Fox. You guys know who Kim Fox is, sponsored by
Soros.
And then, so we're trying to get these guys to stand up and get some balls and fight and represent us, our children, and the country that we're losing, right? And then a guy that I really, really supported and respect, he was chastising me because I had our producer, one of the three apostles, made a funny meme of Jack Novak with like he was a dictator, Hitler. What he didn't know before he attacked me and my friend is like, using these Nazi memorabilia things is off limits. How dare you? May God, all this bullshit, right? Well, he didn't know that Jack Dugan called all of us, the people that asked to censure Tornatori and Zay, anarchist. And then he's been calling me a right-wing radical leftist, right-wing radical extremist. I went to January 6th with a police officer buddy with me. January 5th, I was on an IV for melanoma cancer. My friend begged me to go down there. I shouldn't have went down there. I went with my friend I went to high school with. He was a sheriff, Mendrix. He was a Cook County sheriff. He just retired. And I went down there because my friend asked me. I knew him forever. And I personally went for two things. He drove. I relaxed. I was so exhausted from the treatment and everything. And I went there for two things. One, to see our president speak, right? The second thing is I went there to protect, this was in January 6th, right? So if you saw in December and November of that year, the events they had in Washington, D.C., Antifa and BLM were beating up people, trying to get in hotels, turning over tables. I went there with my friend. I shouldn't have been down there. I was exhausted to try to protect people that had the simple right to try to see our president speak. So what does Jack Novak do? He calls me a right-winged extremist. And then he calls us anarchists like Antifa. I went down there to try to protect our people.
He said there's bad people on both sides.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit, all right? So anyway, the second part of our story, we're going to talk about why we need changes in the Downers Grove Township, actually in the state of Illinois, because we can't have Republicans without a spine. They're attacking us. They're calling us anarchists and extremists, while all of a sudden, when we did this little funny meme comparing him to a dictator, they got butthurt. So Mendrix and all these other rhinos were saying, oh, how could you do that? That's unacceptable. Well, you know what? You kept your mouth shut when Novak was calling us anarchists, right-wing extremists. So you guys could stick that up your ass. So anyway.
Let me just say something here, because I would say, there's this idea that, the certain things are verboten, that you can't use a Nazi meme. There's these unwritten rules, right? Well, I've heard a lot of people criticize that meme that we use to paint Jack Novak, the chairman, who's censoring his own Republican committeeman. And to Terry's point, where was the moral outrage when we found out there was pornography in the schools? Where was the moral outrage when we found out there's CRT in the schools, that children are getting indoctrinated with gender and drag queen? Where's the moral outrage when we found out that the library paid over $150,000 to have some copy and paste PowerPoint report that says that Downers Grove North is oppressing Downers Grove South and that the library is infected with white privilege? Where is the moral outrage when a Republican chairman censors his own people simply for trying to censure Republicans who donate to Kim Fox? Okay,
why doesn't
spare me your crocodile tears?
I'll let you go.
Spare me your crocodile tears. The problem is that we have Republicans who have been co-opted by Democrats and are no longer Republicans. John Curran is not a Republican. He ran for state senate in a D3, right? And unopposed.
$330,000.
Are we stupid? Are we stupid? Are the grassroots people stupid? Is that what they think? That's exactly what they think. They think that we're stupid. They think that we're plebeians. So people like John Curran, who doesn't have an ability to speak or motivate fly, sits up on our Republican stage and tells us Amendment 1 is not a hill to die on. And these people tell us that, we have to work with the Democrats. Oh, why? Because we're 40-19 in the Senate?
Let's save our establishment rhino hate
for
Mendrix,
later. Yeah.
For
we're
later,
a little
right?
upset
right
right
yeah.
now.
So let's save the hate, right? Hate has no place here. And let's talk about our guests. Sorry, Michelle, we know you're sitting there. So before we let Michelle jump on here, we have a little video from when she was on ABC to give you guys a little bit background on Michelle and her story. So we're going to show that story right now, and then as soon as it's done, our third apostle is going to let Michelle jump in, and she's going to share the story. Then we're going to get back to bashing the rhinos in the establishment from DGTRO.
NBC5 investigates. Imagine discovering that your teenager has been receiving thousands of text messages from a teacher, many sexually explicit, dozens in the middle of the night. You might believe your child would tell you if this happened, but as NBC5's Phil Rogers discovered, that's not always the case.
The story unfolded here in Morris, southwest of Chicago, as middle America as it comes.
He wanted to make a sex video, put it straight out there.
Andrew Kozik says he had begun texting Stefan Belegno, a teacher here at Morris High School, because he was having trouble on the baseball team. But before long, he says Belegno was offering him money for oral sex.
It started off at $500 and then $1,000 and then $1,500.
But Andrew never told anyone, and no one knew until his mother heard him talking to Belegno on the phone.
He has no business calling you at 11 o'clock at night. That's completely inappropriate.
When she learned the two had been communicating by text message, Andrew's mother went to her computer and logged into the family's account. She found thousands of messages.
I was just sick because I knew in my heart, I'm like, this isn't just regular text messaging.
The family went to police, who searched Andrew's phone and found nearly 6,000 messages between the two. But only about a tenth of those could be recovered. And indeed, they are troubling. We can't read some of the more graphic messages, but among the more benign, the teacher writes, "When does the kissing begin?" "Icky," the student says. "How about if we just go at it and not video it?" the teacher declares. And on another occasion, "When you're 18, we can give each other everything."
Sometimes males to bond with males are crude.
Raymond Wigel is Belegno's lawyer. He insists the teacher was only trying to help Andrew through a bullying incident on the baseball team.
You say that these text messages do not indicate criminal activity. They certainly indicate stupidity for a teacher to be sending these messages.
Absolutely.
Wigel says he and his client concede bad judgment, but they point to the thousands of other texts no one read, as well as huge gaps in the transcripts.
There's a stupid intent, but there was not an evil intent to have sex with this young man.
I don't care what context you put it in. When you offer somebody money for sex, that's solicitation.
So why didn't Andrew tell someone? Records show at one point he even told a DCFS investigator the teacher's messages had not crossed the line.
Why'd you tell him?
I didn't want to lose his job. I didn't want him to get in trouble.
Belegno was found guilty of indecent solicitation of a minor and unlawful grooming. He is to be sentenced next month.
I want him to have to register as a sex offender. The jail time would just be icing on the cake.
Michelle Peterson says she and her son wanted to talk to us to stress the importance of reporting incidents like this. 18 of these texts were after midnight, 15 after 3 a.m. The Grundy County State's Attorney says he believes it's a cautionary tale about giving children digital technology this Christmas without firm guidelines on how it will be used.
Oh, shit.
All right. So there's a little background on Michelle.
Yeah.
Should we bring her on?
Yeah. Hey, Michelle. Are you there?
Hello.
Hey. How are you?
How's it going,
Good, how are
Michelle?
you?
She had to listen to us before the show started, so I'm so sorry. She's very religious, a nice woman, and she's a very how do I say this?
Heroic.
Heroic. You're heroic. Stand up for your kids, especially back when all this started, before it became popular mainstream for parents to stand up and fight against, all this grooming stuff. And so we want to hear your story. We want to hear about what you're trying to push, about going to D.C., all that good stuff, and as well as why the guy only got 30 days. That's disgusting. And
Yeah.
so we want to hear your story, and we'll hand it off to you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to go through this pretty quickly. Back in 2010, my son was 15, teacher was 34, and he had reached out to him because he was having a bullying incident on the baseball team, and the teacher continued to text him. And I didn't find out about any of this until October of that year. This was 2010, and overheard a conversation, which led me to believe that it was a teacher he was talking to. And he said he was going to pick up some paintballs in his classroom the next day. So I went in, I said, "Who are you talking to?" And he told me this is 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday in October. So it's not baseball season. I said, "You need to hang up the phone. It's completely inappropriate that you're talking to him." Went down to the computer and looked up the phone numbers and saw that there were thousands of messages between the two from May to October of that year. And long story short, we ended up having to find somebody who could get the messages off the phone, because every time a message would come in, my son would delete the messages. And that was because it was my phone. He wasn't paying for it. So I'd check his phone all the time. I would look and see what, text messages he had on there, which apps he had, who he was emailing, those sorts of things. And he knew that I would do that. So when these messages would come in, he would delete them. Now the phone is a mini computer, so those messages are still in the phone, in the hard drive. But the problem is getting somebody who can get those messages off the phone. My son and the teacher initially said that there was no inappropriate texting. My son thought that once I found out, it would just stop and he would leave him alone. He wasn't banking on me going after this guy, because I told my son, at this point, because he didn't take the money, this guy didn't do anything to him, this is about the next kid. And so I said, what do you do about the kid across the street or the kids down the street? if something happens to them and you could have stopped it, how do you face their parents? So my son is really the hero in this. He's the one who was willing to come forward at that point. At 15, 16 years old, he's just embarrassed. He wants us to go away. He doesn't have to come out and face this in front of everybody, but his friends and our family were completely behind him. And so I think he, knew that he had our support. And so that helped. The other linchpin in this was the principal at the school. He had been a counselor before, and he was completely behind us as well. And once we found out what the messages were, because when I told Andrew I found somebody who could get the messages off the phone, he came clean with the principal and with the detective. After 3 hours, they were, speaking with him, and he kind of told them everything, talked about the money that was offered, wanted to make a sex video. The other thing too that wasn't in that video is the teacher referred to Andrew's penis as my little guy, and he'd say, "Am I ever going to get to see the little guy?" This kind of thing. Yeah. And the principal, was, like I said, behind us in this whole thing. And the school was behind us. Their attorneys were behind us. Where I was having trouble was at the state's attorney's office. They essentially wanted me to just go away. All of this hinged on text messages. And when our detective asked for a subpoena to get the teacher's cell phone and the computer, it was denied. And this was initially in the initial investigation. And I'd have to go down there and ask what's going on all the time and call them, and they just really just wanted me to go away. They sat on my son's phone for 5 or 6 months, saying they were trying to get
Michelle,
the messages.
was this teacher, was he also one of his coaches too, or just a teacher?
He was a freshman baseball coach, and this was my son's sophomore year, and he had just texted him to see what he should do about an incident that he was having on the sophomore baseball team. And and the thing is too, is this guy was teaching shop class. So he was surrounding himself with all boys.
Yeah.
So that was another.
So strategic,
kind
it
of red
seems
flag.
like.
Right.
So, so Michelle, you mentioned that you had trouble with the state's attorney. What can you describe some of the pushback you got there? Because I know I'd watched another interview with you before, where you said you didn't get any progress until you were able to work with another attorney. What was some of the pushback that you got?
As well as not only from the attorney, but the law enforcement investigators.
Right.
So law enforcement was doing everything they possibly could do. They were asking for the subpoenas. Their hands are kind of tied by what the state's attorney allows them to do. So law enforcement was behind us. We had a really good detective, and he was doing everything he possibly could do to try to get this to go forward. I would go in and try to, see what they were going to do. I mean, my son told them what was in the messages, and they still didn't arrest him. They didn't do anything. We filed a police report at that point, and they didn't indict him until after we got the messages off the phone. And like I said, they had his phone for 5 or 6 months.
Was
like
he working as a teacher that whole time?
So once my son came forward and said what was in those messages, that's when they suspended him. I believe they suspended him with pay. And then he wanted to resign that next. So that was like maybe September or so of 2011. And then he wanted to resign that Christmas when he was on break. And the school got a hold of me first and gave the situation, said, "Hey, we're paying him. He's off. He wants to resign, but we want to make sure that that's good with you first." I'm like, "Yeah, get him off the payroll." So they let him resign. And like I said, they were sitting on these messages forever.
Well,
and,
what were some of the reasons that they gave you for not prosecuting?
They just said they couldn't get him off of there. They said they couldn't get the messages off the phone.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And since they didn't have proof, they couldn't get the messages off the phone, right? But here's the kicker. As I was working with someone whose husband was a Secret Service agent at the time, and for those people who don't know, Secret Service agents will work with other jurisdictions when they're not protecting the president or whoever they're supposed to be protecting. So this guy was on a pedophile task force, and so he gave me 2 business cards, told me to keep one and to give one to the state's attorney. He told me flat out, he said, "They just want you to go away. This is a lot of paperwork for them, for one kid."
Sorry.
And he said, "Well, you need to keep going in there telling them that you're an educated woman, you're not going anywhere, and you're going to fight for your kid. And you give them one business card, you keep one, and you tell them that you want the messages off that phone within 7 days. If they don't have the messages off the phone, I will get them off of there in 15 minutes. You tell them you're going to turn it over to the feds." So I did that, and 3 days later we had the messages.
Nice.
So, which tells me
Mama bear on the attack.
yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, I'll tell you later about meeting an investigator, but she said the one thing that I did that most parents don't do is when they get told no, they just go away. And she said, you kept going and you kept fighting, you kept going to the next level and threatening them to the next level. And kind of pushing them into a corner.
Wish we had some of that out of our state politicians.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Illinois GOP.
But we meet with these two assistant state's attorneys, and we have the stack of messages there. And I asked them if I could read them, and they both looked at each other kind of weird and like they didn't expect me to ask that. And I said, if that's my property and if you're not going to do anything with it, because they didn't think they could prosecute at this point. They said that they didn't think they had enough to go on. There were gaps in the transcripts. And they didn't have another person to corroborate the story, this sort of thing. So they let me read the messages, and I'm reading through them, and tears are kind of just dripping from my face because everything I told you about was in those messages. The money, the video, what he referred to his penis as, like all of this stuff. So it's all in there. So I pushed the messages back very slowly, and I'm usually pretty even keeled, and I lost it. I don't remember ever being that angry or loud, ever yelling at these guys. And, and I told the older guy, and he was, in his 70s, I said, you have young grandkids, and you're okay with this guy teaching your grandkids. And the other guy had a couple of young children and said, you're okay with him teaching your kids as well. And my husband's kicking me under the table and telling me I need to calm down. I told him, I said, you kick me one more time, I'm kicking you out the door. Like it was a nightmare. And then they said, we don't know that we have enough to go on. And it's just one kid. I said, what does he have to do? Sodomize my kid before you're going to do anything?
Wow.
So
I had a question. Yelling. Did the Republican Party support you and try to help you over there when this was going on?
I didn't go there with this.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I didn't go there with this. And here's the thing about this is this should be a bipartisan issue, right?
Yes. Oh my God.
These are children. So this shouldn't be a left or right issue. This should be a humanitarian issue.
Absolutely.
And we should be protecting our kids. And, the Bible, that's what they talk about all the time is protecting our children. And, these are God's children. We should all be fighting for them and protecting them. And that's clearly not happening at the border. That's not happening anywhere. It's not happening in our schools. And the thing about the schools, what you talk about, Terry, and I appreciate your shirt tonight that you're wearing.
It's for you. I wore this for you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Your son. And but tell everyone, is your son the Marine I talked to you about earlier today? Is it the same? Yes.
He is in the Marine Corps. I actually sent Jason some pictures of him if you guys wanted to put those up.
There we go.
I served.
Their son's a Marine.
I served with the Marines in Ramadi, Iraq. So I'm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He actually got out a couple years ago, so he's out now. But
nice.
He served for 5.5 years. Yep.
I served with some Marines on January 6th.
There you go. There you go.
Is your laptop off the table?
You're cutting out a little bit, homeless. Okay, we got you again.
Okay. Got it. Okay, and so they have these messages, and they're not going to do anything with them, and so this goes up.
Oh no!
She cut out. Yeah, she cut out.
Michelle, are you there?
You there, Michelle? There we go.
Oh, there we go. Hey,
there we go.
Yeah, the power of live TV, right? Or live whatever we're doing. So anyway, what I ended up doing is the principal, then after this goes on for a long time where they're not really doing anything, he gets a hold of me. He said, listen, Michelle, I have his personnel file. I've told the state's attorney they need his personnel file, and they won't get it. So I go back to the state's attorney's office, ask him to get the personnel file. He says, what could possibly be in there that we need? And I said, what skin is it off of your back? I'm like, just go get it. So they do a subpoena for the personnel file, and the school won't release it to them until I come and sign off on it because they want me to see what's in there. So I go to sign off on it, and they use the HIPAA law saying that my son was a minor at the time and his name is all over this documentation. So I go in, and the principal had been a counselor before too, and he had done an interview with the teacher at the time and the union rep as well as the superintendent. And he asked him flat out, did you ever offer Andrew money for oral sex? Did you want to make a sex video? And did you refer to his penis as my little guy? And he said he put his head down, shook his head in affirmation, and said yes. I'm like, we got him.
Oh,
right?
sorry, real quick question. Did the union try to defend that piece of shit, or did they like stay kind of distance in the background?
So the union rep didn't say a word. I think she was taken so off guard and taken aback, and she let him just answer. So he answered, and when I went down to the state's attorney's office after that, and after I signed off on everything, I said, "Listen," I said, "this is what's in there." And I said, "If he's not arrested in the next 7 days, I'm going to have every major news station on your front lawn." And he said, "Well, why'd they let you read it?" And I said, "Because of the HIPAA law." He said, "Well, they didn't have to do that." I said, "Well, actually, I think they did that because they knew I was having so much trouble down here with you."
Their first,
They wanted me to see
their first
what was in
concern
there.
was why? Why?
Yeah. So while we're talking here, Jason, can you please share the screen with that teacher? We just want to make sure everyone knows who he is. You keep going, buddy.
No, I was just gonna say, like, so their first question wasn't, or their first
Oh, no,
reaction
we're looking at your-
was why would they share this information with you? So they, not that they were concerned about the, appalling behavior of this
Exactly.
person.
Exactly, right. So I told him, I said, they're sharing this with me because they know the trouble I've had down here, and they knew that once it got into your hands, I would never know what was in there. And so they were protecting me and protecting my son. And so he waited the full 7 days before he indicted him. And then we went to status hearing after status hearing
Michelle,
after
and
status
so
hearing.
the implication here is that he was pressured into it because he waited that full 7 days, and he didn't show any interest in doing it beforehand until this situation arose where you were
Right.
able to read the actual material.
Right.
And what was
the
the
fact
name?
that
And what was the name of that? Was it the Attorney General that you spoke to, or
No, it was
or
the
the
Grundy
state's
County
attorney?
State's
The Grundy,
Attorney
yeah. What was the name of that gentleman?
at the time. That was John Bates at the time.
John Bates. John Bates did not want to protect children from being groomed by that guy.
Yeah.
Right. So
There
we
we
end
go.
up
There we go. Can you see that,
Yeah.
Michelle? That's the scumbag, right?
Yep.
So is he?
Yep.
Before you keep going with your story, is he out of jail right now?
Oh yeah, he only did 30 days.
And is he still living in your neighborhood?
I not sure exactly where he's living right now. He didn't live in Morris at the time though.
But in Illinois, hold on. In Illinois, if that guy lives in Illinois
he's
and
supposed
he
to be
commits
registered.
another sexual act towards a child, it's likely that he'll get let out after being arrested because of the Safety Act.
So Michelle, if he's still in your neighborhood,
Possibly.
tell him that I'll give him $5,000. So I'm a survivor of prostate cancer, and I'm going to make a movie with him and my little guy. I'll give him $5,000.
This is going sideways.
Michelle's very religious.
Yeah,
Sorry.
hey, know your audience, you creep.
Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
But that's, I mean, are you aware of the Safety Act?
Oh yeah.
So that could happen. That guy could still be living in Illinois, right? And he could commit for example, between my sister and I, there's about a mile difference in Downers Grove, and there was this guy that got caught filming girls in Target and Starbucks up the skirt and whatnot. Got arrested, and guess what? He's back at home now, back on the block. Like
the
this
guy,
is the world.
like
this
guy
is the
yesterday-
Illinois that we want.
Like the guy
for our
yesterday,
kids.
35 kilos. And I don't know if you saw that, Michelle. I don't know if I talked to you about that.
Yeah.
The guy got caught with 35 kilos in O'Hare, and he was smiling. They let him out the next day.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you.
That's okay. That's all right. So anyway, we go status hearing after status hearing. This goes on for like 2.5 years. So in January of 2013, we vote in a new state's attorney, Jason Helland. And our detective went to him and said, "Hey, this case has been hanging out there for 2.5 years. We need you to go after this case right away." So they look it over, and he said, "This has been hanging out there for so long, we might have to take a plea deal." So taking a plea deal would have meant that he would have just had to pay a fine. He wouldn't register as a sex offender, and he'd probably still be teaching.
Right.
So August, we go to court, and he decides then at that point that he wants to take this to trial. So God's hand was all over this because the judge at that time lit him up and his attorney for dragging this out for so long. And, we could have gone to trial at that point. My son was now 19. He was going to school in New Jersey. And so now we got to bring him back for trial in October. And so the judge was not happy. And so not only does this guy want to take it to trial, but he wants to do a bench trial and not even a jury trial.
That's
So
worse.
He's doing
Yeah.
a bench, but he's doing a bench trial with the judge that he just ticked off,
Yeah.
right? So now we meet with the first assist state's attorney, and he says, there's this new law in Illinois. It just became law last month. So this July of 2013, grooming became a law. So now you have normal grooming, right? So you groom your kids to be good, moral people. You groom people to be CEOs of companies, that sort of thing. But this is unlawful grooming where
So
somebody.
I'm going to interrupt you again. The superintendent, Hank Thiel of Downers Grove High School, D99, he grooms our kids with sexual material. So go ahead.
We should get into that. But let her
but go
finish
ahead.
her.
I just had to jump on that because I hate that
Yeah,
guy.
that's okay, but you're not wrong.
We want to touch on that stuff too.
So unlawful grooming is where somebody is trying to gain the trust of someone to be able to do something nefarious to that person. So these groomers, when they're good, they groom the kid, they groom the families, they groom the community. Everybody at the school thought he was a great guy, great teacher. He would volunteer for everything, but he had a reason for doing all of that. So we go to trial in October of 2013, and he is charged with and convicted of solicitation of a minor and unlawful grooming. So at this point, we have the first, at that point, we had the first grooming conviction in the United States. So then I fast forward to January of this year, and I meet a sex trafficking investigator out of Texas at an event in Nashville. Her name is Amy Coelho, and she starts to tell me about a couple of cases that she was a lead investigator on. One was out of California and is with the La Luz de Mundo Church, and they are a church cult. And the women in that church prepare the kids for the men. And they busted 123 different sex trafficking cells. And that was November of last year. She then tells me about one of the Larry Nassar gymnasts from Michigan State was one of the clients.
Everybody's familiar with that, right?
And then she tells me about a few other cases where she was the lead investigator. So I start telling her about my case here in Illinois, and she grabs my arm and she says, "Wait, are you from Illinois?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "When was that?" And I said, 2013, 2014. And she got tears in her eyes, and she said, "I cannot believe I'm meeting you. I need to get a picture with you and send it to my team." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "We use your case for every trafficking case that we bust because we have to prove the grooming in order to prove the trafficking."
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in other words, the dogged fight that you endured with trying to have the state of Illinois hold this predator that was going after your son accountable, made an impact nationally and has probably saved countless children's lives from trafficking and grooming and sexual exploitation because you decided that you wanted to pursue this.
Yes.
And you would have never found that out unless you met this person at that event, huh?
That's right. And so here's the thing, like I said, God's hand was all over it because had we gone to court even months earlier, that was not a law in Illinois. So then I meet Amy then in January, and literally 5 days before that, I'm laying in bed. I'm going to school board meetings. I'm going to county meetings. And the school board meeting I went to earlier in the week, I tried to cram so much into that 3 minutes, and I sounded like an idiot. And so I'm laying in bed. I'm like, is anything I'm doing making a difference?
Right.
And praying and all this stuff. And 5 days later, God puts Amy in front of me and says, "Here, let me show you how great I am." So really, God gets all the glory for this.
Well,
and
I appreciate that story, Michelle, because I think I feel the same way as you sometimes, like, that we're going against the grain and that, is what I'm doing really, making a difference and like, is it worth it? Is it worth it putting myself out there, exposing my family to this? I know that Terry feels that way. He's done way more than I have. That's why I joined Terry, and he's put his face out there and he's been all over the media trying to fight for our children. But you are a prime example of how everybody is responsible for standing up to evil, and that they can make a difference, but you have to be determined to make a difference. You can't just say that whatever you do doesn't matter. I spoke to some high school kids when I did an American Legion speech, and I said that everything you do makes a difference, whether you believe it or not. You could change the trajectory of somebody's life by just telling them, helping them out in a situation when they're in need. I mean, look at your situation where, you fought for your own son, and then sounds like you kept pursuing it, right? And you run into somebody who you never knew from Adam and told you that you had impacted countless. How did that make you feel when you heard that?
I was a hot mess. I started crying, and
I bet.
because you don't think that the worst time in your life is ever going to be used for something good.
Right. Well,
And
yeah.
it was just, yeah, it was crazy. But then I told her really like how horrific it was and how hard it was to get this to go through.
Sure.
And she said, I'm going to tell you right now, your tenacity and your son's willingness to come forward, you guys have saved thousands of lives.
Unbelievable.
Then I lost it all over again, right? But the one thing I asked her, though, a couple days later is I said, hey, if this is the only case of grooming in the United States that sets precedent, could they have possibly used this in the Ghislaine Maxwell trials? She goes,
Look at
she goes,
you.
I don't know. She's like, I'd have to go and look at the case. She goes, but I don't know what else they would use. So to even think that we could have had
trafficking,
a
right?
hand.
That's a prime example of trafficking right there, isn't
If
it?
we could have had a hand in the most prolific pedophile of our time.
Well, hey, the story's not over.
Yeah, it's not over because
It's
then
not
Amy
over.
said, we really need to get a law put in place where somebody who's charged with grooming cannot take a plea deal, because that's why we have the only grooming conviction in 10 years. So we're working on that now, and I've been working with General Flynn and his sister Mary Flynn, and
Oh, that's
they've
cool.
they've helped push this out. General Flynn's biggest thing is he says local action will have a national impact, and this is prime example of that, right?
I believe that truly. The
Yep.
bottom of my heart.
And what
that,
Terry's been doing is the same as well.
to start, you know what, if a grassroots movement is going to make a difference in fighting this political establishment, which has clearly been corrupted by special interest and corporate interest, now is the time, because of the situation our country is in. And you have to speak up, though. You have to speak up, and you have to say you've had enough of the establishment. The establishment is not doing it. We don't have a representative government anymore, right? It does, in the sense that it doesn't represent the people. It represents special interests and whoever pays top dollar.
Well, if you go back and you listen to President Trump's inauguration speech, they represent themselves. They're all about themselves.
That's right.
Yep.
That's what Terry and I feel about the rhinos in Illinois, is that, when you're at a deficit of 40-19, I think it is in the state Senate, and like 78-40 in the House, and you've lost the last two governorships, like, you're not even a party anymore. You're just an arm of the Democrats. But so you know what? I want to pivot a little bit, because obviously you've made a huge impact on sexual exploitation of children, and you've used that platform to continue to do good. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are about what's happening in the Illinois schools these days. Terry and I's biggest fight is, trying to expose the fact that there's pornography in the schools, that they're trying to indoctrinate the kids with gender ideology and telling them a fourth grader can be sexual, and the CRT and all the other stuff, and just basically trying to groom them and indoctrinate them, with this communist and sexualized rhetoric. So I'm curious to hear where your fight is taking you and what you think about what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that's going on in the schools, for sure, by doing all that, they're actually desensitizing it for these kids, right? So then it makes it easier to molest them if they don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
They're talking and saying all these, sexual body parts. It's going to make it much easier for them to molest these kids.
Right.
And it's going to make it easier for those kids to not say anything to their parents.
Right.
They're going to think it's normal.
To normalize sexuality to children is to try to convince them that they should be, normal feelings of sexuality, which, how do they have a right to do that at the behest of parents?
They don't.
Right.
They don't. And that's the thing, though, like, they're using Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, right? So you start doing that. Yeah. You start doing
after
that.
our own hearts.
And you talk about the Communist Manifesto. I mean, this is the way that they attack a country, right? So they invade our borders, they overpopulate us, they put all the stress on the system. Then they go after the kids. I mean, this is how you take over a country.
So Michelle, just
It's
real
like the
quick,
Hitler Youth Program too.
It is.
Right.
It is. And well, that's the goal, right? And the communists in Russia and China did it too. The Chinese communists love to weaponize the kids because they knew that they can control them. But just real quick plug for our buddy. You mentioned the rules for radicals. We had this
Christopher
guy,
Adamo.
Christopher Adamo. You
Rules
should
for defeating radicals.
bingo. You should check out that book if you haven't. It's great, and it's
We have it.
awesome.
Actually
That's
we do a
great.
book club. We just did a book club on that
That's
book.
right. He's
last
supposed to. He's going to be
Sunday.
on your show eventually, right? Remember?
Yeah, we're hoping that he'll join us.
Great
yeah.
book.
Well, he's a nice guy.
He nails
you know
it
what
on
we
the
need
head.
to do, Michelle, is we got to get him here to Illinois, right? For an event for many of us people to help not
Right.
just us, but the Republicans.
Absolutely.
Right.
What the teacher call the little teeny guy? to help the Republicans.
Help them with their
little teeny guy.
Yeah, help them
Right.
remember where to find the teeny guy.
They don't get what they're doing to us, or maybe they do, right? That could be part of their whole plan, is they're all part of this uniparty, and that's what they want. They want us eating bugs and owning nothing, which
Well,
is
yeah, all the powerful
Klaus Schwab,
people
the World
do.
Economic
Yeah.
Forum, all of that. Even the World Economic Forum and the UN, they talk about age gap love, and they want to normalize pedophilia. So that's all part of this. And a lot of those folks that are in the World Economic Forum are part of NAMBLA, which is NAMBLA, Man Boy Love Association. So
Yeah. There's a lot of these documents people don't like. I remember when I saw something on the World Economic Forum, and I back in like 2020, I'm like, who the hell are these guys? You'll own nothing and like it. Yeah. I send it to like a friend of mine. He's like, isn't that a conspiracy theory? I'm like, I sent you the website.
right, they're unelected
Michelle,
oligarchs.
like to have some closing statements from you because we have to get like pivot to attack the rhinos that are ruining like our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we've been chomping at the bit, being silent because you have such a great story, and
Michelle,
we respect you and everything you did, especially your son, the Marine. Right? He's a Marine now.
She's a perfect example, and I want if you could incorporate this, Michelle, in your closing statement of like one person being able to make a difference. Because when you were gone, we were talking about how
mama, man, a mama bear.
She saved countless children's lives from sex trafficking because she was able to get that law as a precedent.
Yeah,
so,
and talk about Washington D.C. So Jason, the third apostle, you have the screenshot over there, and talk about talk about what you're trying to do to help other parents and prevent them from going through what you did with your son, and talk about your event.
Sure. So I was actually asked to speak at this event with John Stubbins, and he's trying to put out a movie called American Anarchy, which will talk about the J6ers. It'll talk about all of the election fraud, talk about some of the trafficking stuff going on. So he's trying to get funds to put this money out into theaters. But I was actually asked to come speak at this too, so that I could get in front of maybe lawmakers federally who will help push this out on a federal level to get a bill put in place or a law put in place where someone who's charged with grooming or trafficking cannot take a plea deal. And just the other thing to keep in mind is the reason these people hate President Trump so much is he took us out of the World Health Organization. He took us out of parts of the UN. He took us out of the Paris Climate Accords. He wrote 2 executive orders and signed 7 other bills into law against human and child trafficking. So he's taking their funding away from them, taking their money away from them. So they can't do this stuff because that's what funds, the election fraud and the medical fraud and everything we've been through the last few years. So that's the reason they hate President Trump so much. And, if people would stop watching mainstream news, they could actually maybe find out the truth about.
Oh, you mean he advocates for
administration.
individual freedom instead of a World Health Organization who wants to.
Correct.
So I want you to do 2 more shout outs, right? One for our friend Vicki Finnegan and her church in Orland Park, and the other one for my new friend Mary.
Yep. Vicki Finnegan, she's also a Marine, but she's been doing she's been doing some events at Southbridge Church in Orland Park on Wednesdays called Finnegan's Gatherings at 7:00. So if you want to join there, you can. And then Mary Crowley Ministries. So Mary's from California, but she has a standing Wednesday night show, and she's really kind of pushing out the truth too. And she has all kinds of guests on her show. and does a phenomenal job trying to bring truth to what's going on. And then one more thing I wanted to talk about too, America's Future, which is with General Flynn and his sister Mary Flynn O'Neill. And they're bringing a summit here to Illinois, to my church, which is Fox River Lutheran Church in Sheridan, Illinois. So we're going to do an anti-trafficking summit on January 26th and 27th. And we're hoping to get about 400 or 500 people there.
Is there anybody? Is anybody streaming there? If not, maybe we'll come there and do that. How's that?
I think America's Future will be streaming, but I'm sure that they would allow you to stream on yours as well.
Is it Flynn's new organization, From America Project to America's Future?
So he's the chairman on this, but his sister is the director of America's Future. And so you have Lara Logan's part of that as well.
Nice.
And Liz Crokin, Mike Smith from Out of Shadows, Tara Rodas, who is the DHS whistleblower.
Yeah.
You know who she is. So she's on the board as well. So they'll all be coming out here for this event. And I believe that event is only $50 per person. We're hoping, like I said, to get 400 or 500 people there. January 26th and 27th at Fox River Lutheran Church in Sheridan. And we're also going to be doing an ARC training.
Are you there, Michelle?
Let's just get her.
Which is the Association for Recovery of Children.
Hey, Michelle, can you just repeat the
here.
last one?
It looks like it froze.
Yeah, can you repeat the last one that you were saying?
Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yeah, now we
Sure.
can hear you now.
It's
Just
called
repeat
ARC training. It's the Association for Recovery of Children, and it's a certification to help people who've been trafficked, and to kind of help recognize people who are being trafficked. And that's going to be held in Highland, Indiana, March 11th to the 16th, and it'll be for the whole Midwest. I'm actually going to this training next week in Sarasota, so I can maybe speak to it more after I have the training. But it's a phenomenal training certification course. So I just wanted to bring those events up as well.
So
Awesome.
you could be on anytime. We'll have you on in the future. So maybe we'll stream out there for local folks, just for us to be there and stuff.
Yeah.
I think. And,
Okay.
Respect you big
Oh,
time.
man.
You were like ahead of
You're a
all
hero.
of us, right? Right. And
Yeah.
you come
I
across like such a
actually-
kind of like calm, meek mom, but you are a bear. You're a mama bear.
Yeah, it's funny. Let me see if I can unblur my background real quick, and I'll show you a new logo that I have. That I'm going to have some.
Jason, you want to take down the? There we
The
go.
mama
There we
bear
go. We
thing.
can see it.
A little bit over your
So
head.
let me
Move to the
see.
your right.
Wait, she said she's gonna.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to add this in here so that it has a little correction in here, but it's Luke 17:2 I'm putting in here, but this is my new. It's going to be a logo I'm going to be using.
Nice.
Whoops, wrong way. See if I
No,
can get it in there.
we can see it.
So
I was a mama bear before I was cool. Okay.
before it was cool.
Before
Yep.
it was cool. Okay.
So I
Awesome.
was, looking at all these mama bear t-shirts they have, and there's like this mom walking by looking all cute, and the kids walking behind her looking all cute. I'm like, that is not what you look like when you're protecting your children.
Well, we appreciate your heroism, and I think one of the things that Terry and I talk about all the time is that we wish there was more dads that were, because we see all these mama bears all
Amen.
across the country stepping up to the plate, and so that's what Terry and I are trying to do, and we're lucky to have an example like you to follow.
So I see that little sign in the back. My glasses are off. Wipe your hooves, right? Is it?
Yeah.
So
That's
do rhinos have hooves? Because we're gonna pivot into the next section with the
Yeah.
rhinos.
yeah.
Thank you
Yep.
thank you so much,
Michelle.
Tell your son we said
Thank
hello.
you.
Yeah. Hey, tell your son hoorah.
Will do. Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Great guess.
Yeah,
Great
yeah.
guess. That was
So,
a-
like,
Every time we pull up, you see stars, you see stripes, you see flags on the cars and the trucks and the bikes. Every time we pull up, we go hard, we outside, we got flags on our arms that are tatted there for life. Every time we pull up, we don't care if you mad, we cherish this land, the haters can't get buried in rags. They set fire to old glory, turning fabric